Welcome to this episode of the Roofers Roundtable podcast. I'm your host, Brett Hutter. On this podcast, we have owners, sales reps, and anyone within the industry who wants to share their story and their experiences wherever you're at on it. This is brought to you in conjunction with CommercialRoofer.com. CommercialRoofer.com has helped countless roofing owners across the country scale more profitable, more sustainable roofing companies specifically through their commercial roofing divisions. They do this by offering better marketing, growing stronger sales teams, and also growing service and maintenance programs to have more profitable jobs. So with that, let's get to our guest for today. Welcome to this episode of the Roofers Roundtable. Today I'm joined by Mr. Stephen Forte coming out of Montgomery, Alabama. So Stephen, appreciate you joining me today.
Glad to be here, man. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, so I know it's now, especially when people come on right at this time of year, things are really getting busy, heating up with storm season coming on. So I definitely appreciate the time. So we're going to talk a little bit about some commercial today. You're in that space. You've been in that space for a little bit now. But I don't want to, steal too much shine away from you and say things that are incorrect. So I'll let you just kind of introduce, your company a little bit, who you are, who you're with, and all that, and then we'll get into it from there.
Hey, everybody. I'm Stephen Forte. We're with Innovative Roofing Pros out of Montgomery, Alabama. That's our home base. We've got other offices in Florida. We're a residential and commercial and industrial contractor that does a lot of different types of roofing kind of all over. And so we're real excited to be here, be a part of Brett's Roundtable.
Yeah. So we were talking a little bit before. You do a lot of commercial right now, primarily commercial right now. Most guys typically will start off residential, but making that shift, it's always interesting because when I was selling, it's always like you want to stay away from commercial, all that stuff. But there's always it seems like there's that tipping point for people when they go to get into the commercial space. So just kind of talk about what that was like from you for you, and then as you did it, kind of what it looked like.
So yeah, we started off. I grew up in construction. My grandfather was a home builder. So I grew up around the business of construction. It wasn't until about the time of the Great Depression, as we like to call it in our thing, of about 2008, right? And we had a situation where, I got into roofing out of college. I was going to be an engineer, decided, you know what, I'm going to go a different route and chase a dollar, I guess. And got into residential sales. And then, we got into our own company, and we did, 800 roofs one year with a storm. And it really wasn't a crazy bad storm. It just hit the right neighborhoods that had the right amount of age on them, right? With shingles, 12 to 15-year-old neighborhood. And we just cleaned house, man. And between that and the other stuff, we did 800 roofs that year. And that was great and awesome. And I went to my first International Roofing Expo, and I met a guy out of Dallas, Texas, a very, very good friend of mine with Galt Construction, named Bobby Norrell. And Bobby is still a dear friend today. And we were sitting there at the Peabody Motel, or hotel rather, not motel, and having some conversations about business and such, and telling about what we did. And, we were beating our chest a little bit, 800 roofs, and did all millions of dollars worth of revenue. And thought we were high on the hog. And there was a lot that went into that. As anybody that does that kind of volume knows, the amount of stress, the amount of overhead and people you have to have in place to really make those things work and become a reality without having chaos. And so one of the things that Bobby was asking me was, are you doing any commercial? And I'm like, no, that's like the big bad wolf. Like, I don't want to get into that. I don't want to lose money. I've heard, doing new construction build stuff, you don't make but a couple % profits. It's like not worth it. Don't do it. Stay away from it. And he's like, that's the most insane thing anybody's ever said. That's when he asked me, he's like, you did 800 roofs. Would you have rather collected 800 roofs, chased 800 people to complain about leaks, or done it with 50 to 60 and made probably even better money with way less stress, way less overhead, and maybe half the staff? And I'm like, well, okay, tell me more. And that's how we got into it. And Bobby became essentially a mentor and a coach for me. And I think that's one of the things that people miss. It's easy to get in. It's an ease of entry business into residential. We know this in Texas and places like Georgia that don't have really any kind of licensing. And quite frankly, in Alabama, it's ease of entry too. The barriers are very, very short to jump to get into residential. And so with that, anybody can get started in it. It's really kind of simple. It's not that difficult. But commercial, I liked Cody's deal. I saw a post today where he said, if you're going to get into commercial, dive in, don't dip your toe. Mm-hmm. It couldn't be any truer, because it's like the people that go in there and try to like dip their toe and they think they're going to try to do TPO, screwed up. I mean, they mess up a job, and again, everybody makes mistakes, but do things the right way. Get yourself a coach, get yourself a mentor. I come from, grew up in athletics, was coached at some high levels through my high school into my college career. And man, as soon as I got out of that and got into my professional life, I stopped being coached. Thought that I had it all figured out, like, most of us egotistical guys, and especially the roofing industry are, I got this, I know what I'm doing. I grew up in the construction business. I can go put a roof on, and fell on my face more times than I can count. And where I could be compared to where I'm at today, even though I feel like we've done pretty well and we've trudged through the mud and the trenches, pretty well, and we've done well with our finances and we've been frugal and we were smart. But if I would have had a coach outside of Bobby, again, Bobby was instrumental in getting me the information, the understanding of what we needed to do from insurance as well as in the commercial world. And he lived in Texas. I lived in Alabama at the time. I actually went and met and worked with him for 2.5, 3 years to really learn some more about what we were doing and how to do things. So naturally, at the end of the day, I think one of the takeaways is, if you really want to get into this business of commercial, if you want to accelerate your businesses in general, get yourself a good coach, whether it be one of two ways. I have two. I've got a coach that helps me, like Bobby, and bounce ideas off of every day about roofing and commercial work. And then we also have a coach that helps me with my business, because a lot of roofers get into the business, or sales guys get into the business because they think, man, I can make more money. I'm smart. I'm smarter than this guy. I can do it better. And maybe you can, and God bless it. But sometimes a lot of people don't realize what it takes to really run a business, and the liability that comes with it. It's insane. And even with some of the even most recent talk about, what the IRS is doing with 1099 W-2 stuff, that's a big buzz right now. And a lot of companies are trying to figure out what to do and how to navigate those waters. It's not just easy to go into this business anymore and just start throwing shingles down. God forbid if you want to get into commercial. You need to know what you're doing, and getting with reps that are in the manufacturing side of things. There's a lot of roofers out there, even like ourselves, that will help people. I don't have a problem having conversations. We teach classes twice a year with American Weather Star, and they bring in all their contractors for a 2-day class to promote and to educate their people on coatings. I think coatings is a very good, easy to barrier entry for people to get into commercial work. Get you on commercial buildings. That's the biggest thing that you could probably do, rather than just jumping into a 200 square tear off of TPO and not having the first clue about what to do, and relying on some crew to potentially make or break you in that situation. Know your business, know your product, know how to do things. And it's incredibly important.
And that's, I think, I think pretty commonly for people to get in, because, no disrespect to people who only do residential. I pretty much only sold residential, so I'm not trying to hate or anything, but it is easy. It is easier. The nature of the business is easier. The nature of the roof install is easier. Projects are smaller, so the coordination isn't nearly as difficult. The drawback, exactly like you said, that happens is when you get to doing that kind of volume. You're doing 800, 900, 1,000 roofs in a year. It's a lot of warranty calls. It's a lot of people trying to collect AR on a lot of different people. So it is complicated. And so I understand the appeal for people wanting to look at commercial, because they're looking at exactly what you said. Less people, less, bigger jobs and all this kind of stuff. But I want you to talk about something specifically, because this is, and this was my, when I was a sales rep and when a guy was trying to convince me to, do primarily commercial, this was my drawback. And so I looked at his pipeline, and he was selling, very comfortably, he was selling $2 or $3 million a year. So, and when I say selling 2 or 3 million, so he was selling $2 or $3 million a year with not working very much. So, he could have really turned it on and done more if he felt like it. He just didn't. He wasn't at that point in his career. But I looked at his pipeline and the things he was working and the size of his deals, because he was, selling $1.5–2 million deals. And I was like, man, if just one thing goes wrong with one of those, you nearly have a 0 year. That freaked me out, just that having that less to work with. It just seemed like, one or two things goes wrong, and now you're really up, I was about to say, bad phrase. You're not in a good position. So anyway, so just kind of speaking to that, like as you went and made that transition, because you said, I actually saw Cody's post this morning too, and I do think it's a good idea to invest fully getting into commercial, but not having that residential, that kind of lifeblood to sustain you, that consistent money, it's nerve-wracking at first. So what was that transition like as you did that, as you kind of went to make that push towards getting mostly commercial?
So there was a transition. You're right, Brett. Naturally, the ease of entry business of being residential helps. And then once you have yourself an established base where you can start to have some money in the bank, I think obviously one of the biggest things that's just rampant in our industry is you get a guy who goes out there and sells 10, 20 roofs in a month and makes a bunch of money. And they're like, oh man, and they go buy themselves a $150,000 dually. It's like, that's not what you do. You keep the crap truck and you go put that money aside and you start building your business, right? That's part of the issue of people not knowing how to build their business. Mm-hmm. So the transition is it's not even just knowing your product, like we talked about before, knowing and understanding, getting somebody that can help you, coach you, walk you through. One of the biggest things that Bobby told me, and I tell every one of my guys and everybody I talk to that's trying to get into this business of commercial, is I can show you. You can look at so many YouTube videos. You can go to Commercial Academy with Paul Reed and them over there, and they're incredible with what they're doing. You can get with guys like Cody Klein, who are incredible with doing commercial stuff, especially really geared around service and maintenance. And that's a very easy way to get in and on roofs. That is the key. You've got to get on as many stinking roofs as you can. And here's why. Because you can go to 1,000 homes and go to neighborhood after neighborhood, and they're all shingles. They're just a different pitch. There's a different angle, but it's a shingle and it's a wood deck. And it's really, really easy. But you go and get on commercial roofs, obviously, and you've got 1,000 ways to skin that cat. And you'll get on, and there's not a day that goes by. I've got two places I got to go today. And one of them's a big industrial manufacturing facility, and one of them's just a metal roof for a welding company that I'm going to go personally inspect. Those two are starkly different situations of how you approach them, how you analyze them, how you scope them, how you make sure, okay, well, what are the inherent problems? What do we need to fix? How can we fix it? And what are your options? Because on both of those, there's literally 10 options that come to mind right out the gate that are truly viable options. And so you get into the transition back to that, you need to get on more roofs. You need to manage your finances good and well. I know that may not be the right grammar, but you can't get into bigger jobs and be able to afford, labor wants their money within a week or less, right? 2 weeks max. So you're going to have some money. You're going to have some cash flow to be able to take care of those things and get them. Now, the beautiful thing about private negotiated work is you can pretty much be paid within 7 to 14 days. That's pretty norm. You get into the fact of, okay, well, I want to start doing some bigger jobs with maybe some general contractors. You start transitioning into that field. Great money, great opportunities. You got to be on your P's and Q's a little bit, because now there's people holding you accountable, not just you doing what you're doing with the owner. But then your money is also out 30 to 45 days. You got to be able to float that. And you got to have the resources with your suppliers and those types of people to be able to allow you to float, your material bills 30 to 45 or 60 days, which doesn't happen for just anybody. It took us 10 years to get to the point where we had 60-day terms with our suppliers because we paid our bills. We were on time. We communicated, and we paid our crews. Our crews are paid every week. So you have to have that money to flow. So you have to have good financial stability. You got to work on it. Don't think that you're going to just jump into a $1.52 million job and think that you're just going to be able to float that with payments.
Yeah.
It can be done, but it's not easy. And I don't want to scare people. That's not the point of this, but it's the reality. And what I want to tell people is, look, and I tell these people when I deal with them at the FAST academies and the different places that I go to and talk, I know you want to swing for the fences and spear the whale. Everybody does. Every dude wants to kill the whale, kill the elephant, and you'll get there. But man, take the baby steps, get in there, find you somebody that knows what they're talking about, that's been in this industry, that's got a good reputation and knows their business when it comes to commercial roofing. Guys like Cody Klein, guys like Paul Reed, guys like Bobby Norrell. Then you go and you work your way in, you get yourself in a good financial position, and you start putting money away to be able to have the cash flow to front and handle the bills that are going to come inherently with these, where you're not stringing your crew out and then they go and mutiny you because you couldn't pay them this week, but you'll get them next week. But they don't care, right? They want to know that you're going to get there, especially if you're using subs. And if you're using in-house crews, you can't not pay them, because then you got the labor unions and you got, the government coming after you for not paying your people and employees. So those are things that you need to do. And then get on roofs. Get on roofs. That is the transition. Find yourself a coach, get yourself educated, get your finances in order, and get on more roofs to educate yourself in the field, in the real world.
I think, something that you kind of touched on there, and this is something that interests me just in a societal level that we have. Like, it's like a problem that I don't know if it's always existed, if it's always like that. I have a perception that things changed, creating kind of this void. But I have a perception but I know it's an issue right now, is that there is a massive gap in, like mentorship, to mentoring somebody to the logical next step. And roofing, so using an example of this is, when I got out of college and I got into, my old career, what I was doing, there wasn't really anybody, we had, who's supposed to be your mentor, but they have their job to do. And really, you're kind of done learning at that point. You're just kind of going figuring it out for yourself. Roofing is interesting from the standpoint because most people become owners because they don't want to be a sales rep their entire life, and they want to step into the next thing. And so they're like, I got to, the only thing to do is be an owner. So you're not moving up through anything. You're not like, climbing a ladder and then you're getting all this experience. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to go and be an owner. By and large, guys are, hey, I'm pretty good at selling, and I have a good enough idea about crews and whatnot that I can put together. Now I'm going to go be an owner. So you're really, this combined with just the legal nightmare that is the modern business world, because there's so many, it's not like we're saying, it's not as simple anymore. And that's why, there's this gap that needs to be filled by other people, so to get people along the line so that they're not getting, into legal trouble. They're not making decisions that are going to crush them in the future, even though, hey, there's nothing wrong with learning a valuable lesson by taking one on the chin. But, so you seem to be somebody who always has somebody to reach out to, that believes in having somebody else come in, to kind of fill those gaps for you. I'm curious to start on this part of it. What do you think it looks like had you not had, like, if you, let's say you had the same conversation about getting into commercial, like, yeah, I'm going to do this, but he didn't help you out anything from there. It's just, he inspired you to do commercial. Now you're going to go out on your own. What do you think that looks like for you? And how was he able to kind of maneuver you through it to become more successful as you got to this point?
It's really hard to say, I'll be honest, because if just knowing what I know and who I am. I mean, I'm a sponge of the industry.
Mhm.
Anything that's new, anything that's exciting, going to conferences, learning from other people and other people's mistakes. Those are always great. And that's really what a coach is there for, especially somebody that's really in your business or in your space or has been in your space. Um, I would say that I wouldn't be where I am. Um, Bobby, like I said, was my coach in getting into commercial and dealing with insurance because he had an immense amount of knowledge of insurance, how to deal with adjusters, how to deal with engineers, how to deal with those appraisals, all that stuff. He had an immense amount of experience in it already at the time. And even though I didn't go into as many of those, because of his guidance, we were able to actually settle things before they got into the almost the litigious stage of an appraisal. I think I've been through a handful in my career. And so we were able to handle those things. But because of his guidance and knowing what to look for, knowing what to do, bouncing ideas off of, even had him come out with my very, very first roof that I got approved for commercial work. I flew him out here. I put him up. I had him come in and do what he needed to do as a consultant. And it was on a hotel. And we literally went from the insurance company lying to the the building inspector that they just need to do this small little repair, and they didn't 2 layers of roof, by the way, code compliances and all this stuff come into play. Next thing you know, we're able to overturn this and go from what was going to be a $2,000 claim to repair a couple corners, turn into a $236,000 claim that got approved, and it cost us less than $100,000 to actually get the roof put on, torn off and put on. Big payday, big opportunity, and all of that would not have been possible without having that coach. So to answer your question, I don't think we would be where we are. I would have probably, I don't know, the whole like learning from your own experiences and taking them on the chin. Trust me, we've done it. But I think it would have been a lot worse. Who knows if I would have made it through? Hard to tell, but I know where we're at today. And I know it's because we had people like Bobby. And then even now today, and me and Bobby, I wouldn't say we separated or we grew apart in a way. I mean, it's kind of like one of those things, like if you're in a franchise when you get started in those types of things, there's an immense amount of information and knowledge to be able to get you going. It's the snowball effect. And there's a lot of time that's spent getting you ready, understanding the model, understanding the processes, and here it goes. After a while, once you know how the process works, you don't have to have them in your back pocket as much. So,
yeah.
I still lean on Bobby a lot for a lot of things, but I also have other coaches now, even the BTA, we're part of Breakthrough Academy. And they were instrumental in continuing right now, even to get us, even on the back end side of things, getting ourselves molded and modeled into what we would like to call a real business, right? Because here's a beautiful thing about roofing that I've realized, that you don't have to have your crap together and you can still be successful. I think we can see that a lot. I mean, you're looking at me and I'm telling you, I threw enough mud at the wall and enough stuck. And did we waste money? Did we screw up? Did we lose money on jobs? Heck, yeah. We did a tile job in Orlando on a beautiful home and still lost $35,000. And you're thinking, well, how do people, oh my God, how in the world did you recover from that? It's like, we do millions of dollars worth of work and we're able to learn from a difficult mistake of what not to do on a 12 concrete tile job, XYZ and elemental P. So, I mean, Bobby, I know I keep saying his name, and if he sees this, he's going to cringe probably. But, it's like, but I can't say enough. And I've told Bobby this, and he knows it. I mean, he was instrumental in us getting to where we're at in the commercial world. And again, it goes back to having that coach. And Bobby was the guy who was just a wealth of knowledge that helped me get to that next level. And then, we threw enough mud at the wall for many years, and it was great because we were, roofing, if you do it right, it's very profitable. Most people know this. That's why they get out of sales or production. They go try to start their own because they do see some of that money.
Yeah.
A lot of times, like I said, they don't see the back end of what really has to happen. And that's why a lot of companies fail, because they're not really business owners. And then if you want to become a business owner, they try to do it on their own and they don't get a coach. They don't get somebody that knows more than them, and they can't put their ego aside and really just be a new sponge, not just a sponge to the industry that you feel like you've already know enough about, but getting into commercial, being a sponge of that part of the industry, and then being a sponge and really gathering knowledge and insight and intellect and really putting that aside of your ego to know, well, what do I need to do here? How do I need to deal with my insurance? How does workers' comp need to work? How do the legalities of W-2 and 1099 work? Get attorneys. They are expensive, but my God, get your contracts reviewed. Talk about all these things. Make sure that you're in compliance, because at the end of the day, it only takes one time for somebody from the government to come in and start auditing your books. And next thing you know, you're up to your eyeballs in fines and you don't know what to do, and you try to shut your doors. And that's not what any of us want.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that you really need to focus on.
It's funny because even as you're talking, and this is where I think a lot of the value of having somebody who does it and has done it at a high level in the commercial side, because as you were talking, you're saying a lot of things it was killing misconceptions that I had before I had learned anything about commercial, because there's things that and I don't know if what I'm about to say is true, but I feel like 90% of people in the roofing industry think a certain way. So one of the things that you said that I remember very specifically, I had like probably legitimately 10 people tell me this, is that commercial, the margins are terrible. Right. So, you get all your money you make your money on change orders. So you estimate jobs at basically a break even point, and then you anticipate there being a change. I've heard that from like probably 10 people. And it wasn't until I met some guys who were selling it, and they're telling me what the margins were. And I was like, it's pretty much what a residential roof is. And they're selling them at 40 to 45% ish, sometimes more depending on the complexities of the job. And then the other thing is that I knew guys who made 90% of their year on service, on repairs essentially, and they're selling 2-3 million at 65% margins. Like, you can do that in residential too, but they don't add up nearly as much, because you're adding by hundreds of dollars, as opposed to in commercial, a lot of times it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. Even still, you get $25,000 repair, $125,000. It goes crazy. Anyways, I just went on a little tangent about because seeing like the people who, as they get into it, you have to be very careful of the chatter that you hear in the industry, because people will tell you those things about that are terrible misconceptions to go in with, and things that can really kill you. Because if you're relying on change orders and they don't happen, and then you're doing a break-even job, and the slightest thing goes wrong, then you're losing a lot of money without probably the luxury that you guys had with having millions of dollars to learn from your mistake, and work to learn from your mistake and pay off the other job. But kind of getting into it, because we talked about this a little bit before we hit record and everything. The other thing, and I have a perception that people do this. Like I said, I don't know everyone in the industry, but I know quite a few, and I feel like in residential, people try to make a big effort to set themselves apart, because you're dealing with homeowners. They're typically more emotional about the situation, about, you're working on their house, and there's a lot more attached to it. So people will go and kind of roll out. It's not as uncommon for people to roll out the red carpet. Within commercial, though, I feel like people get a little bit lazier. They just kind of bid on price and or rely on the relationships. They don't take the next step necessarily, from what I've seen. But we were talking before, and that's kind of been a big differentiator for you, that in the things that you do in the process that you put in place to separate yourselves on these deals. So could you talk a little bit about, kind of what those processes look like, what you guys go through as you go through inspections, as you, present contracts, whatever it might be?
Absolutely. Yeah. The situation with commercial roofing, like you said, I guess to your point, I think the residential guys are really starting to get a grip on customer experience. that's what's going to separate you from the masses. There's a cesspool of roofers. That's what I call it. It's terrible. There's more and more popping up every day. And I was driving to work today and I saw another one in my market. I'm like, who the heck is this guy? You know, some other Joe Blow coming out with some chuck in a truck. I mean, look, we all had our start and I get it. I did too. But again, my competitive nature is like, I want to go cut their tires, right? I don't want them selling nothing, right? Yeah. So it's like, you know, great. God bless them. There's a lot of pie out there. What is it? The staggering number of businesses that don't make it past the first year, let alone 5. Maybe they make it, maybe they don't. The problem is what kind of trail of destruction do they leave in its path that we have to go and bear for the people that are trying to do this thing the right way for whatever reason. But I know that was a slight tangent. My apologies. But
it's all good.
You know, what were we talking about? Man, I got fired up about that. But about the
differentiating stuff with the
differentiating stuff on commercial. So yeah, you get into the commercial side and it's still the user experience is just as important. I mean, guys, I don't understand why I go to a client and when we present what we present, they come back to us and they're just like, wow. And I don't mean that to pat ourselves on the back or beat our chest that we're the best since Betty White. But I mean, my goodness, when I go, well, show me what you got. I mean, you're going to go with me, right? And they're like, yeah, you're getting the job. I'm like, do me a favor. Show me what you got. What did you get from these people? And these are local contractors. Some of them are out of state on these bigger projects. And this is on the private negotiated side. You're not going to get this on a public bid, even though they do open them and you present a number. But even some of your other stuff, you're not going to see this type of stuff. But I've been able to on the private negotiated side. And I've seen guys that I would thought were reputable, long-standing contractors. I still think they are, but my God, they're sending in some like one-page QuickBooks quote that is like mistyped, misaligned. It's got a barely 3 lines of scope, and it's $150,000. And I'm like, there's no way I would give you $150,000 for you presenting me with this jacked up quote. There's just no way. And then I have people still doing the old school handwriting. Now you would think, well, man, now. There's nothing wrong with that, Stephen. Maybe there isn't. Maybe you can get jobs that are $20,000, $30,000. But I know I own businesses. I own property. And if I had an HVAC guy come to me and handwrite me on some little, baby legal pad and write me a little thing and says, that's $150,000 to put 3 5-ton units on your building and duct them out and everything, I'd laugh at you and say, bye. Because you're not presenting yourself as a legitimate, well-endowed contractor that's just, you got your crap together. Again, I want to preface this or postface this, that there's not necessarily anything wrong with that. I just want you to understand that the user experience, the customer's buying experience, yeah, it may not be their money. Yeah, it may not be their building if you're talking to a building engineer or a project manager or whatever. But if you are talking to that building manager or that property owner, for instance, it is a big deal to them. So present them something. One of the things that we do that I know a lot of guys out there do, but unfortunately, even in the markets that I'm in, I've had people come to me and go, you're the first person in 25 years of me doing this, whatever they're doing, whether it be an engineer, a real estate agent that does a lot of commercial stuff. We talked earlier about 2 hospitality management companies that I'm dealing with, and both of them were just blown away. And I'm like, it wasn't anything special. All we did was use something like Company Cam on the very initial thing before we really got into it. We went out and we got on one of their properties each, and they had a lot of issues going on. We documented, we annotated, we put a report together. We gave them some summary of notes of what we saw, what their corrective actions needed to be, and what the cost would be to get it corrected. And they were presented with a report, with photos, with annotations, like this points to here. Like, what am I looking at? A sea of white? No. Here it is circled on the roof with a marker. This is what your issue. You've got a puncture here. They don't even get that, let alone anything else. These guys just send them an email. Literally, this guy got an email from another contractor for the same property, said, you got a handful of issues going on here. It's going to cost you $5,000 to fix it. Man, let me know if you want to move forward. In an email, just in the body of a text. We sent him 50 photos, annotated, 50 different deficiencies that he had going on. Gave him a summary, gave him a scope of repair, gave him a price, several pages long, of course. You got 50 photos, and we make them where we probably try to put, if we can, 2 photos per deal, because I don't want to try to them have to squint and look and see what they're looking at. I want them to get the full picture. And the guy was blown away, and he said, I don't care if you were 10,000. We were like, I think we were about the same price roughly, but he's like, you could have been double the price. I would have given you the job. Why? Because we actually put something together of value, and we're not giving that to our commercial clients in a lot of ways. So one of the things that we've been doing kind of a campaign with going after a lot of the apartment complexes, and we talked about this earlier. And if anybody knows and deals with property management companies, and especially on the local level at the property management level, on site, they're very, very, very tight, and they don't want to spend, right? Everything's like repair. You're not going to go in there and just tell a 28 building facility that they're going to have to replace their roofs, and let's just do that tomorrow. That doesn't happen. But they'd also want to know what's going on. And the same exact thing happens where they don't get the information, they don't get the data, and they don't get a good user experience. Because what ends up happening, you go tell that property manager, hey, this is what you got going on. It's going to cost you X amount of dollars to fix it. Well, they're not experts in this. Guess what they have to do? They have to take that to their regional or their director or whoever else and try to explain what you just tried to explain to them. This whole grapevine thing, that whole thing you did in grade school. Yeah, that's what happens. And that message gets diluted and completely twisted by the time it gets to the right person to make a decision to tell them move forward with it. And what? They are confused. They don't know what's going on, and they just don't do it. And they go hire the chuck in a truck to go out there and slap a bunch of roofing cement on a shingle roof and have no business being out there. So with these types of things, they can now present that same thing to the next guy and the next guy and the next guy, and your message stays the same. You don't have to worry about the grapevine effect. And then naturally, at the end of the day, one of the things that we're starting to do with the property management companies especially, and again, a lot of your bigger contractors that have their act together using the right softwares, I won't name them because I don't necessarily want to promote them but I mean, they're good. I mean, we're using them. And I guess if you want me to, I can kind of tell you who they were that we're starting to use. We're actually integrating with one of them right now to help really dynamically get ourselves put together. But with this, what we literally do is we go to these property management, especially apartment complexes. They'll have 15 to 30 different buildings. And we'll turn around and we'll go look for $150 a building, for instance, just to throw a number out there. What we're going to do is we're going to come out, we're going to get on every roof. We're not going to send a drone up unless it's a 12 on 12, 3-story roof. We're not going to send our guys up there. We'll probably do a drone for an inspection, but most of these aren't like that. But we're going to get on each roof. We're going to identify every deficiency. We're going to annotate those photos. We're going to be very concise with what photos we give you. We're not going to take 100 of every roof and photo dump you and you go, I don't know, overload information. Not good either. Annotate the right deficiencies for each building. Then we tell them for each building, and it's all broken down. It's really easy to do. What are the deficiencies on that building and what's going to get it to a maintenanceable standard, right? Bring it up to snuff, if you will. That's this cost. Here's the scope. Then we're also going to go ahead and figure out what is it going to cost to replace this roof. Let's just say it's a shingle roof. It's going to cost you X amount of dollars to replace this roof today. Also, what's the grade of the roof? A, B, C, D, E, F, or A, B, C, D, F, right? That's kind of the range. And we have a legend there about, okay, if it's a 1, you're good, or 5, it's good. And then it's 1, it's not good. Right. And these are your years. You got 2 to 3 years, you got 4 to 5 years, you got et cetera, that's a grade that we give them. And this is all part of the report. I mean, and it's a lengthy report, but they now have access to it. And we do that on every building. And then we give them, okay, well, here's also what it's going to cost you to maintain these buildings every year. We're going to do an inspection a year. Here's what it's going to cost you. Here's what it comes with. We're going to do this inspection. We're going to do this checklist. We're going to do this report with photos and a checklist. And we're also going to have up to X amount of repairs, minor repairs built into that. Because if we're already on the roof and we see a nail pop, we're going to go ahead and fix that right there. It's real easy. And so we're adding more value for that. And at the end of the day, they have a tiered idea of what they're doing and what it's going to take to really give them a property analysis is really what we call it. And you look at it and go, okay, well, that's $3,000. Well, you just created so much value if you really put it together correctly and you articulate your point of what you're trying to do for them. They're like, holy cow, there is not a single person in my entire career that's ever thought about, told me that, whatever. So that's what we do now. And I can't tell you how much response, positive response, that they're willing to go spend a $3,000, like all to just get data, not even to get anything really done. So that's been a huge part of what we're doing with apartments, for instance, and that can be translated into a lot of different arenas of the business that, other buildings that may just have one building and they want to get set up on a maintenance plan. Cody Klein is a guru with this, with doing maintenance plans and service and repairs. So, getting in with those types of things to create yourself some reoccurring revenue every month, every year, and be able to get yourself to where, we're doing $500,000 a year, for instance, of just service and repairs, of maintenance contracts. That just every year, like clockwork, it's an annual, a biannual, a monthly, whatever it is, inspections. So, and you can spread those out over the year to where it's not like you can do it during your slow times. So some of the guys up north, in between snowstorms and stuff, they could probably try to do that. And it obviously can help offset some of those down months and down time where they're having to lay people off or having to store up money to pay for their best guys to keep them on staff and not lose them during those winter months. Those are opportunities, man. Take advantage of that. And it's an ease of entry into those businesses and ease of entry into the commercial stuff like we just talked about. And what else does it do was part of the thing we talked about before. It gets you on a ton of roofs because not everybody's ready to go and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to replace their roof, but they're ready to spend $500 to $2,000 today to get it repaired. And now you're in, you do a good job, you create value and you add value. And the next thing you know, you're on a roof, you've gotten experience, and you've got yourself a customer that you can follow up with and hope to God later down the road, if you do a good job, you might be able to have a good shot at getting the big job.
I have a funny story about, you talk about giving reports and things like that. And this was actually an adjuster. So I had an inspection. Her homeowner called out because she had her roof had been denied, called out our company. And so I happened to be the person. I was like, yeah, I'll initiate the reinspection process. And, so as I was trained to do, I did full report on company cam, and I would put arrows going up to the damage and arrows showing this, and I put label it and all that kind of stuff. And the adjuster was so blown away because I used arrows, and I remember she specifically said, she's like, oh man, I just can't believe how professional that looked, pointing it out like that. And she ended up approving the roof without sending somebody back out, because I used arrows. So you have to understand human psychology. People really like these visuals, and it really does set you apart, and people like to see those things, and it can win you a job right off the bat. And just doing the little things and then going the lengths that you've taken throughout your process, that's what creates relationships. That's what creates trust. That's what creates that opportunity to get property management companies that have multiple properties and they want you to do them all. This type of things does work with it. Now, so as we're coming up against the time, and want to be able to respect your time and all that jazz. So, but I always like to kind of finish. You've been in this. You've had a couple of different companies. You've been in it for a little while. But where do you see yourself going with your current company? Like, what's your ambitions with it? Do you want to be in every single state, or do you want to, where do you kind of see it going?
Well, I think for us, we're in a scale and growth mode right now. And one of the big things is getting our processes, as you grow in different stages of your business, especially starting out, you kind of handling every hat, you're throwing one hat, throwing the next one on, mask, whatever you want to, analogy you want to use. As you grow and you start to add people to your business, one of the things that we, had an issue with naturally when you try to do things on your own, you think you got to figure it out, is we create chaos. Chaos isn't good in roofing. We all know this. Like you said, you can go do a $2 million job and have chaos on your hands, and you can really lose your butt really quick. Having, the right steps and processes and checklists so you don't miss things, especially on these types of projects, are important and imperative. You can screw up a little bit on a residential roof and it not really hurt you. Like you said, on a big roof, it can really hurt you. Mm-hmm. But for us, the goal is to scale. The goal is to become efficient, get our processes dialed in for each level of our business, for each station of our business and each role of our business, and then scale and be able to be duplicatable and efficient. That's kind of the motto that we're running with in 24 is become efficient, become duplicatable, and become scalable. And with that, all the factors that come into play with that, in one of the, I guess, the foundations of that, beyond getting our sort of SOPs and those types of processes done, is the user experience, the end user, their experience, giving them the absolute best experience, because blowing them away from the competition is, like we just talked about, is going to be the catalyst that'll give you more work than you can stab at. I'm telling you, it has been one of the most incredible ways that we've created more revenue, more business for ourselves. When I'm hearing guys all over the place saying, "Hey, it's getting tough, it's getting tight," and you get in these groups and you hear about, man, I'm thinking about going to chasing storms because it's, we're not able to do anything. You're not, in my opinion. I hear guys in Houston, for instance. I see, this is just like not long ago. It's like Houston dried up, and I just kept seeing so many things from people saying, "Hey, Houston's dried up. I need to go somewhere." And I'm thinking to myself, Houston is massive, like 10 times bigger than my market, and I'm sitting over here like, what value are we not creating? This is the issue that we have in our business or in our industry. We're not creating enough value for our customers. We're not building the right relationships for ourselves and with our customers, for them to feel comfortable. Because when you walk into that thing and you do a lot of ums and ifs and you're looking around and you're not sure of yourself, that's why you got to be a sponge of your business, guys. You've got to walk in with confidence, not the whole fake it till you make it. And yes, that does work to a degree, but man, it doesn't take long for you to walk into the wrong dude in the wrong process or in office of a guy that really does know what he's doing or talking about, and you look like a buffoon.
Yeah.
It'll take one time for you to do that. And if you have an ego, like most of us do, and you have a little bit of a fight, you're like, I ain't going to let that crap happen again. And I'm going to go learn what I need to learn, figure out what I need to figure out. So for us, it's getting efficient, duplicatable, and scalable. We did 17 last year. We did have a little bit of a storm from Hurricane Ian. We did a lot of work down in Florida in our Florida office from that. And our goal is to get, this year to get to, back to that number organically. And we're there. We're on track. We're probably going to blow past it. We're super fortunate. We're very blessed. I'm not going to lie. Things are rocking right now for us. And again, it's because of this. And we're in a slingshot. We're in the slow down to speed up mode for ourselves right now. And I call it the rubber band effect, and that slow down to speed up. We're stretching that rubber band. It seems like we're not going anywhere, but we're getting these things in place to just launch. And in the process of doing that, we're still growing, which is incredible. And so we see ourselves in 24 getting to the 17 to 20 mil mark. We see ourselves in 25 going to the 30 mil mark. And that's really where we're looking. I could sit here and say, yeah, we're going to go to 100 million and be as big as Tecta or something crazy. That's not really the goal. I don't want to be a $1 billion company like Tecta. I don't want those kind of problems. I should be out of the business long before that. But I think a good sweet spot with the right processes and systems is somewhere between 25 and 30. That's just what I've seen. That's what I've talked with a lot of guys that are in that industry. Some guys beyond it and before it, some guys right at it. For guys like me, that I feel like we have a good understanding of the business, it's really more of the systems and processes at that point, and getting the right people on your team. I think getting ourselves to the 25 to 30 million really, because like I said, guys, you can $1.5 million project, $2 million project. Those, when you're able to do those, it doesn't take many of those to get to 30. When you're building on a tilt up, some of these guys that are probably going to see this, they kick rolls on line of sight warehouses, and you can go do one of those and have a $5 million roof, because they're just so massive, but the margins are a lot less.
Yeah.
You could do 5 of those and boom, that's your year. For 25 mil. So, again, everybody's got their way of doing things. There's so many revenue generating streams in the commercial side. Don't try to take them all on at once. I tried to do that too. You're gonna overwhelm yourself, and you're gonna have chaos. Work on one thing, guys like Cody Klein. Work on other things like with Paul Reed, their team, and different people. Work with people like at the BTA and get your business in line and get it in. Get your house in order. Right. That's what a lot of you can't help other people till you can help yourself.
Sure.
And then really take care of your team. Get the right people involved. Hire fast, fire fast. That's one of the big things that I've learned as well. Is if they're not the right fit, get rid of it. It's better for both of you. And find the right people, man, and really take care of them, and just mind your business. So I appreciate the time, Brett.
Stephen, I appreciate you coming on. So for everyone else listening, thank you for listening to this episode of the Roofers Roundtable. As always, if you'd like to join the show, there's going to be a link, whether you're listening as Apple or Spotify, with the episode. So just go ahead and click on it, fill out your information. We'll go and get you on. But for now, we are out.